Yes, I have.
Post-racial? Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think you might have before.
I've heard it.
Because as a person of color, it is abundantly clear to me that we're not.
No. No, no, no. Um, just because we have a black president does not mean that racism is over, does not mean that we don't need racial categories anymore, because they still matter to enough people that we can't move past them.
And I don't think we live in a post-racial society. We live in a society where it's more structural. It's not so much obvious racism anymore. Like, it used to be like, when you say the N-word or, you say black people suck, you're racist. But now it's like slidden and hidden in the crevices of our institutions.
Not at all. I think race is something that, especially in the U.S., we're kind of taught to see. We're taught to see and then to pretend like we don't see, kind of thing.
But I think I became aware of the fact that we don't live in a post-racial society when I was in middle school, because the middle school I went to was a gifted school. Surprise, surprise, it was mostly white. In fact, there were certain years there when I was the only person of color there. And I don't know, for the most part it was never really a problem, because I was with those people from 3rd grade up until 8th grade. But in elementary school, it was fine. But then in middle school, when we got to the whole stage of people getting crushes and like doing the whole little dating thing, and it's like all cute puppy love and stuff, that never really happened with me. Like, it did with all my other friends, and like we all hung out in a group, boys and girls, and they all had that little thing going on. But I noticed that nobody in that school was ever interested in me, and I realized that, I started thinking that I am very much like my other friends in our personalities, in our interests. The only difference is my race. And so that's when it first kind of like clued me in to the fact that my race others me.
I mean, that was more or less the way that my parents tried to raise me, or at least that they tried to raise me, yeah. Because they were like, you're not black, you're not white, you're not mixed, you're not a color, you're Brandon. I don't know, sometime like in middle school is when, I started referring to myself as certain things to refer to my racial identity that other people wanted me to refer to myself as. I don't know, I didn't get to be just Brandon for a while, like too long.
Mine's actually pretty recent. In high school, my freshman year, this boy used to call me Blackie. He would just run around. That was what he called me. I would tell him not to call me that. I would tell everybody else, hey, he needs to stop calling me Blackie. He would just call me Blackie, and people would just deal with it.
It really hit me when I first heard the term Black Lives Matter, which I heard in relation to police violence. And to me, I was kind of like, police violence affects everybody. I don't understand where this is coming from. And then because of that lack of understanding, I delved deeper into it to try to understand what Black Lives Matter meant. And I got this grasp of the systematic inequality that we talk so much about, that does kind of devalue not only Black lives but other minorities in a lot of ways that people like myself who are white and in the South don't necessarily experience.
When I realized it, it's from personal experiences. It could be from the way a white person looks at me, to where they don't even want to have contact with you. Like, they feel like their hand will melt if your hand raises theirs or something. That's how I knew. And a situation that happened to me, I was in Walmart once, and the white girl would not hand me my receipt when my hand was clearly out in front of her. She just put it in the bag and wouldn't even look me in the face. And I was like, the right then told me that she was racist.
I definitely don't think that it reflects the truth of the racial state of our society. As to whether it's better or worse, I think it kind of depends on what's being covered, because whenever there's a riot or a protest, they always make it out to be way worse than it actually is. If the rioters or protesters are black. If it's covering something that's more positive, like displays of solidarity, racially speaking, then they're usually very quick to jump to post-racial society and make things out to be a lot better and more progressive than they actually are.
I would say that when there actually are black characters, when there actually are characters that are not straight, white, cisgender, male, at least middle class, like, they don't really like to talk about how we're at a disadvantage, any of us are at a disadvantage, you know, and they just try to make it out to be that we're all living in this, like, big happy family.
I feel like the media portrays black people as overly violent or adapted to society. Like, you don't see, like, the middle ground. You don't see the structural racism. You don't see that at all in the media. You see people protesting and black lawyers who went to Harvard. You don't see the in-between, and I think that's pretty messed up.
I think media is definitely biased in every way, not just media like news sites, but media across the categories. And just regular TV you watch, people on social media, any kind of media, always has some sort of bias, just because as humans we have whatever we've learned and we take that and we apply it to the world around us. And so if somebody's never learned of systematic inequality, or if somebody didn't know the history of police and residential relations in a place like Baltimore before the death of Freddie Gray, they wouldn't have the same kind of interpretation when they present that story. So there's always some kind of bias in the media, and that's why you have to kind of, if you're going to be a person who's going to talk about things in a media way, you should be trying to educate yourself about every side of it.
Basically, the media is just so full of crap. They will do anything to make a very racist situation seem. They try to make light of it as if it's not that bad. You know, such as what it reminds me of. Not so well. It reminds me of Trayvon Martin. What happened? Now, in the media, I'm not saying that all media was bashing what happened and were backing George Zimmerman, but there were a lot of people that were. There were a lot, you know, all of us black people were behind Trayvon. Some white people were too, but there were some things I saw in the media to where it was like, oh, you know, he was a thug and this and that, and I'm like, well, if you're not racist, you wouldn't go about talking about the young man like that, and you guys don't even know him, you know, and that goes to show right there that when you can drag somebody's name through the mud like that and you never met him, you don't know him at all or whatever, and over a situation like that, that just shows how racist that at least a third of the media was.
I don't know that we'll ever really get there. I feel like my opinion has changed a little bit in the last 10 minutes, because being post-racial, as most people think of it, is like race doesn't matter. But I think race is always going to matter. But I hope that we'll one day get to the point where not necessarily race doesn't matter, but like race doesn't negatively affect people who are not white.
I don't know. I mean, certainly not in my lifetime, because if this has been centuries and centuries in the making, and we're not even a century into undoing it, or we're like a century and a half into starting to undo it, like, it's gonna take a lot longer to undo than it did to build up. And so I would love to see us get to a place where, you know, we recognize each other's racial identities, ethnicity, culture.
I mean, with time, I mean, it's not going to happen overnight. I mean, we still have a lot of ways to go. I mean, I don't think it's completely possible. I mean, things will get better, but I don't think it'll ever go away completely. Because I mean, America was built on racism, so it's like, and we must take America down, if you not just and rebuild it, or just like continue this society we have now.
Well, I kind of think that we will achieve a post-racial society, and that I think eventually all races will just be miscegenated. Because I'm not English, I'm a lot of different kind of European descent mixed together, and that same kind of thing I think is going to start happening all over the world, where all kinds of races will mix together, and so in that way I think post-racialism might one day exist, but otherwise I don't think there's a need to have no races. There's just a need to have no racism.
But to be honest, I feel like racism is always going to still be around, just like that old 80-year-old granddad with his Confederate flag is. I believe it's going to stay around. It might not, I pray it doesn't take a turn for the worse, but I just can't see a world without at least a little bit of racism. It's very messed up. I wish people weren't racist, but, you just can't change some people's minds, and some things you just have to let be.